Thank you, Chris. So I'll be talking about the technical consideration for adaptation of telementoring system in healthcare systems. It doesn't work. I have nothing to disclose. Still not working.
Can you advance the slide?
Yeah. So before I start, I would like to emphasize that when we talk about telementoring system, in principle, they're no different from the regular medical video conferencing system you know. The only exception is that those systems are adapted for the use of in the operating theater and in surgical education settings. Those systems usually contain a camera, interface card, and a processing unit. They need to have a network connection and a remote device that used to display the images and videos coming from the operating theater. Next slide, please. We had a lot of discussion around what would be the optimal or the best telementoring system. And we came to the conclusion that the optimal telementoring system should be safe, it should be reliable, it should support high quality transfer of video and audio, it should have interactive capabilities, and it should be affordable. Next slide. Next slide. When we talk about safety, it's very important when you're adopting a telementoring system in your hospital. It is very important that the equipment that is installed in the operating theater has to be FDA-approved equipment. And the requirement for telementoring system is it has to be a Class 2 device. With regards to the software that's installed both on the operating theater and on the mobile unit, this has a different requirement, and those are the HIPAA and the MDDS compliance or requirements. We have a technology white paper coming out in the next couple of months, and I'm gonna, if you need to read more, if you need more information, you can look it up there. Next slide, please. Next slide. When we're talking about one of the most biggest problem in adopting a system like that is that those systems usually require a very large bandwidth. And the hospital we looked at during my study was most hospital network infrastructure were usually outdated and were not designed to handle the increased amount of devices and high-resolution media content. The telementoring system usually have a high demand for, or a demand for a very large bandwidth with low latency. We found out that the minimum requirement is 5 megabit per second per operating theater, and the acceptable overall latency is 400, but ideally it should be under 200. Next slide, please. I have to also mention the upgrading those network infrastructure is also a very expensive process, and usually it's not feasible to do it in every hospital. So in case it's not possible at your hospital, we can suggest establishing a separated proprietary network for telementoring. And that's usually less costly than replacing your whole network. Alternatively, you can use technologies like wireless technologies like WiMAX, 4G, LTE, and in some years you will be able to use the next generation mobile internet, the 5G. I have summarized some technical information about the wireless technologies, and you can see that 4G, for example, is sufficient. It can go up to 100 megabit per second peak download, which is more than enough for telementoring. Next slide. Here I have a short example for a hospital that we implemented the telementoring program. It's in a city called Mo I Rana in northern Norway, about 400 kilometers from our city. And when we came to that hospital, we tried their network, and we found that their network would last updated 20 years ago. So nothing we tried worked. So no video and no audio was good enough to do the telementoring. So we connected a 4G router, and we ran some tests, and we got this 100 megabit per second result, which was very good, and we were able to complete that session with them. Next slide. Next slide. You all probably, in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to talk about a little bit about video and audio consideration. And you've all been in the operating theater and experienced firsthand how noisy operating theaters can be. If it's the peripheral equipment that is located, like respirator, or if it's noisy nurses that are talking during your operation, it's very important to choose a system that has a proper noise reduction or noise cancellation technology. We also, you should have an adequate speakers or wireless headphone system. When it comes to video and resolution, the minimum requirement is 480p at 15 frames per second. But ideally, we would like to see systems that have higher resolution at 720p to 1080p at 25 to 30 frames per second. At those resolution, it might be, it is a very bandwidth dependent requirement. So next slide. Another point when you evaluating or choosing telementoring system is looking at the codexes that they're using. The most two common codexes that are used today are the H.264 and the VP8 and 9. Those are the major streaming codexes for network and satellite spaces. The main problem with those codexes is that they are still not optimized enough for video and audio, especially high definition video. But the answer for that is right around the corner with the new codexes, the 26.5 and the VP10 that are at the final stages of beta, and we're going to start seeing them more and more towards the end of the year. They will allow us, they allow better compression of data, and you will be able to push higher resolution and larger frame per second on the existing infrastructure without the need for upgrade. Next slide. Next one. When you talk about the telestration and telestrators, this is probably the most desired feature in telementoring. For those of you who doesn't know what it is, it's a technology that allows you to draw a line or a sketch over a moving video or image. Next slide, please. Just wait. This is, can you play this or? Yeah. This is another experiment that we did with
it's like scarred.
Todd. It was
It's that common thing
Dr.
you see in the older people.
Okay. And you can see the technology
sometimes it might be hard to see the vase that's crossing here.
Oh, okay.
But as long as you know that you can see the needle through the peritoneum, you'll be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to cauterize exactly more inside.
Yeah,
yep.
Inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me put it here. Yeah, that's good. Okay, next slide. Another feature another thing that is very important is to choose a device that is one device for all, that will be compatible with all your laparoscopic, robotic, or open equipment. Here's an example for the same system that we use with Dr. Ponsky, but we use it with the Da Vinci in robotic prostatectomy. Next slide. Another thing is the ease of use and portability. I think it's kind of self-explaining. So we want to see more devices that are plug and play, one button operation, and that are portable, that we can move them from one operating room to another. Next slide. Affordability, next slide. Most of the systems that we reviewed, the cost was between $1,000 to $80,000 US dollars. Some of those had a monthly subscription that went up to 5,000 per month. Because nobody really knows what is the return on investment will be for those, for telementoring, the technology cannot be prohibitively expensive. Next slide. So to conclude, the optimal or the best telementoring system should be safe, reliable, should have high quality transmission, interactive capabilities, and affordable. Next slide. And thank you for your attention.